My daughter-in-law announced that my daughter-in-law would be babysitting her 5 kids every weekend, and then she took everything. I was folding a towel when my phone buzzed, a blue towel that still smelled like the lavender softener my mother used to buy. I remember pausing with the towel half folded in my hands. My knuckles ached. They always ached now in the mornings. The phone was on the kitchen counter next to the coffee maker I forgot to turn off. The screen lit up with a text from my daughter Lisa. "We need to talk. Call me when you're alone." That was it. No emojis, no mom at the end. Just 7 words that landed in my chest like stones. I stood there in my kitchen, in the same house where I raised her. The same yellow linoleum floor we put in back in '98. The same crack near the refrigerator where Mark dropped a cast iron pan and never fixed it properly. My husband. My Mark who died 4 years ago in the bed upstairs while I was making him tea. But this story is not about Mark. Mark was the good part. This story is about what happened after he left me alone in this world. I called Lisa back while the coffee maker kept dripping onto the hot plate. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was clipped, like she was standing in a hallway checking both directions before speaking. She said, "Mom, there's something you need to know about Derek and Jessica." Derek was my son, her brother, my only son. Jessica was his wife. The woman he brought home 10 years ago, with the long dark hair and the nervous laugh, and the way she said "yes, ma'am" every time I offered her a glass of sweet tea. I thought she was shy. I thought she was polite. I thought she was the daughter I never had, because Lisa was always so hard, so distant, so angry at the world since her father got sick. Lisa said Derek filed papers. I said, "What papers?" She said, "Against you, Mom. Against the house, against the trust, against everything." I sat down on the kitchen floor. I am 68 years old, and I sat down on my kitchen floor with the phone still pressed to my ear, and I listened to my daughter tell me that my son was trying to take my house. The house my grandfather built in 1957, the house where I watched the moon landing on a black and white television with my own father crying because he never thought he would see something so beautiful. The house where Mark carried me over the threshold in 1979 with rice in my hair and my mother crying in the front yard. The house where Lisa learned to ride a bike and Derek learned to drive, and both of them learned that a home was supposed to be a safe place. I want to go back further, before the papers, before the phone call, before I knew what my son and his wife were doing while I was making them dinner. It started with the grandchildren, 5 of them, all under the age of 10 when the requests began. Derek and Jessica lived 40 minutes away in a newer development with houses so close together you could hear the neighbors' argument through the walls. Jessica stopped working after the 3rd baby. That was her choice. I never judged her for it. I raised my own children without a career, and I know how hard that life is. But money got tight. Derek was selling roofing supplies. Decent money, but not enough for 5 kids and a mortgage, and the 2 cars they kept trading in every 18 months. So Jessica started asking for help. At first, it was small things. "Can you watch the boys for an afternoon so I can go to the dentist? Can you pick up Emma from preschool because my car is making a noise?" I said yes every time. I am their grandmother. That is what grandmothers do. I remember my own mother watching Lisa and Derek for entire weekends so Mark and I could drive to the beach and pretend we were still young. She never asked for anything. She just showed up with groceries and stories and that old wooden spoon she used to make applesauce. I wanted to be that grandmother. I wanted my grandchildren to remember my kitchen the way I remembered my mother's kitchen. Warm, safe, full of sugar and butter and the smell of something baking. But Jessica is not my mother, and I was blind to that for years. The requests became demands around year 4 of their marriage. Jessica stopped asking. She started telling. "I need you to take the kids this Saturday. We have a wedding." I said, "Okay." "I need you to keep them overnight on Sunday because Derek has a work thing." I said, "Okay." "I need you to pick up Emma from practice and take Liam to his appointment and have dinner ready by 6 because we are all coming over." I said, "Okay, okay, okay." Because that is what I said to my own mother. Okay. And she showed up. And I thought that was the contract of family. You give, you give, you give. And one day your children give back when you are old and tired and your hands hurt from folding towels. I was wrong. The worst part is how gradual it was. If Jessica had walked into my house that first year and announced that she planned to drain my savings and turn my son against me and leave me alone in a cold apartment with nothing but memories, I would have laughed. But she didn't do that. She brought me casseroles when Mark was dying. She held my hand at the funeral. She cried on my shoulder in the church parking lot while the men loaded the casket into the hearse. She said, "You are not alone. We are here. We will always be here." And I believed her, because I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was too horrible to hold in my mind. After Mark died, the loneliness was a physical thing. It sat on my chest every morning. It followed me from room to room. It made the television too loud, and the silence too loud, and every chair in the house feel like it belonged to someone else. So when Derek started coming around more often, I was grateful. He would show up on Sunday afternoons with the kids, and we would watch football or old movies, and I would cook big meals like I used to cook for Mark and the children. Roasts, potatoes, gravy that took 3 hours to get right. Derek would eat 2 plates and tell me it tasted like childhood. Jessica would smile from across the table and say, "You are so good to us." And I would feel full, not just from the food, but from the feeling of being needed. That is the trap, needing to be needed. It makes you blind. They started asking for money about 6 months after Mark passed. Derek came alone one evening. He sat in the living room on the blue couch where his father used to nap. He told me Jessica was stressed, money was tight, the roof needed replacing, the water heater broke, the kids needed braces and summer camp and new shoes because Liam grew 3 sizes in 1 year. He said, "Mom, I hate asking." I said, "You don't have to hate asking. I am your mother." He looked at me with those same blue eyes Mark had. Those same blue eyes that made me fall in love in 1977 at a drive-in movie theater while Steve McQueen died on the screen. I wrote him a check for $8,000 that night. I told him not to worry about paying it back. He hugged me for a long time. He smelled like the cologne Mark used to wear. I cried after he left. That was the first check. There were more. $5,000 for Jessica's car transmission. $3,000 for Emma's hospital bill after she broke her arm falling off a trampoline. $12,000 for a down payment on a bigger minivan because 5 kids did not fit in the old one. I wrote every check without hesitation. Mark left me a good amount of money, life insurance and retirement savings, and the house that was paid off years ago. I was not rich, but I was comfortable, and I thought I was investing in my family. I thought I was buying time with my grandchildren. I thought every dollar was a brick in a wall that would keep us together after Mark was gone. I did not know that Jessica was keeping a spreadsheet. I found out about the spreadsheet later, after everything fell apart. My lawyer showed me a printed copy during a deposition. It was dated, organized, color-coded. Every check I ever wrote was listed in columns with notes in the margins. Emotional guilt trip worked. Ask again in 3 weeks. She seems lonely. Send Derek alone this time. She is soft when she is sad. I read those words in a fluorescent conference room with a man I was paying $400 an hour, and I felt my body leave the chair. I felt myself float up to the ceiling and look down at this old woman with gray hair and trembling hands. And I thought, who is that? That cannot be me. I would have known if someone was keeping score against me. I would have felt it. But I did not feel it. That is the thing about betrayal. It does not feel like betrayal while it is happening. It feels like love. It feels like family. It feels like you are doing the right thing, because the right thing is supposed to hurt a little. The right thing is supposed to cost you something. That is what my mother taught me. That is what her mother taught her. You give until there is nothing left, and then you give more, because that is what women do in families. We hold everything together with our own bones. The babysitting started after the money. Or maybe the babysitting was always there, and I just did not see it as part of the plan. Every weekend, Friday afternoon to Sunday evening, 5 children under 10 years old. Emma, who was 9 and bossy and beautiful and looked exactly like Jessica. Liam, who was 7 and never stopped moving and broke 3 of my mother's china plates before I learned to hide them. Twins Noah and Natalie, who were 5 and spoke their own private language and would only eat food that was beige. And baby Chloe, who was 3 and followed me everywhere like a duckling. Every weekend. Jessica did not ask.
She told me Friday morning what time they would arrive. She texted a list of instructions. Chloe cannot have red dye. Liam needs his inhaler before bed. Emma has a project due Monday, so please make sure she reads for 30 minutes. Noah and Natalie need baths every night because they get rashes. Do not let them watch anything with fighting. No sweets after 7. Lights out by 8:30 sharp. I did it all.
I drove to the grocery store every Thursday so I would have enough food for the weekend. I bought the beige snacks, the organic milk that cost $8 a gallon, the special laundry detergent for Chloe's sensitive skin. I converted my sewing room into a bedroom for the twins. I bought bunk beds from a secondhand store and painted them white. I hung curtains with stars on them. I wanted the twins to feel like my house was their house. I wanted all of them to feel like Grandma's house was a home, not a babysitting service, a home. But that is what it was to Jessica, a service, a free service with unlimited hours and no contract, and a stupid old woman who did not know she was being used. I remember one Saturday in particular. It was October. The leaves were turning. I had all 5 kids in the backyard while I raked the lawn into a pile they could jump in. Chloe was sitting on a blanket eating apple slices. The twins were fighting over a plastic shovel. Liam was trying to climb the oak tree Mark planted when we first moved in. Emma was on her phone, ignoring everyone. I was happy. I remember thinking, this is what I worked for. This is what all those years of diapers and carpools and parent-teacher conferences were for. This moment right here. My grandchildren laughing in my yard while the sun went down and the air turned cold, and the smell of leaves filled everything. Jessica showed up at 6:30 to pick them up. She did not get out of the car. She honked the horn. Twice. I gathered backpacks and jackets and the bag of dirty clothes from the weekend. I walked the kids to the minivan one by one. Chloe was crying because she did not want to leave. She wrapped her arms around my leg and held on. I had to peel her fingers off one by one. Jessica did not look at me. She was on her phone. She said, "Same time Friday." Then the door slid shut and they drove away, and I stood in my driveway holding a pair of Liam's socks that fell out of the backpack. I went inside and sat in the dark living room and listened to the silence. The house felt huge. The bunk beds in the sewing room were empty. The kitchen still had half-eaten plates of macaroni on the table. The television was still on some cartoon channel the twins had been watching. I turned everything off. I washed the dishes. I went to bed at 9 o'clock because there was no reason to stay awake. That was my life for 2 years. 2 years of weekends. 2 years of money. 2 years of telling myself this was normal, because every mother I knew had done the same thing for their own mothers. But the difference was that my mother never asked for anything, and Jessica never stopped. The cracks started showing in small ways. Derek stopped coming inside when he dropped off the kids. He would pull into the driveway, text me that they were here, and drive away before I could open the front door. I asked Jessica about it one Friday. I said, "Is everything okay with Derek?" She said, "He is just busy. Work is stressful." I said I would like to see him more often. She smiled a smile that did not reach her eyes and said, "I will tell him you said that." Then she left. I started noticing things when I visited their house. New furniture, a big television mounted on the wall, a patio set with a fire pit. Jessica's nails were always done. Her hair was always highlighted. Derek had a new truck, not a work truck, a shiny black truck with leather seats and a premium sound system. I asked him about the truck. He said he got a good deal. I said, "That is nice, honey." I did not connect the truck to the checks I was writing. My brain did not work that way. My brain still believed that my son loved me, and my daughter-in-law was grateful, and the money was helping them survive. Not thrive, survive. The conversation about the house happened in February. Jessica came alone. That should have been a warning. She never came alone unless she wanted something. She sat at my kitchen table and held my hands across the old wood and told me she was worried about me. She said, "You are all alone in this big house." She said, "It is too much for you to maintain." She said, "Derek and I have been talking, and we think you should move somewhere smaller, somewhere easier, an apartment maybe, or a mother-in-law suite." She said, "We could help you sell the house. We could help you manage the money. You do not have to carry this burden alone." I said, "I am not ready to leave this house." She squeezed my hands harder. She said, "Think about your health. Think about the stairs. Think about the yard work. What happens when you fall and no one is here to help you?" I said, "I have neighbors. I have friends. I have Lisa." She said, "Lisa is not here. Lisa lives 2 hours away. Lisa has her own life. We are the ones who are here every weekend. We are the ones who bring the children. We are the ones who love you." That was the word she used. Love. She said it like a key turning in a lock. I told her I would think about it. She kissed my cheek and left. I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, staring at the crack in the floor Mark never fixed. I thought about my grandfather building this house with his own hands. I thought about my father crying at the moon landing. I thought about Mark carrying me over the threshold. I thought about Lisa and Derek running down the hallway in their pajamas on Christmas morning. I thought about every meal, every birthday, every Thanksgiving, every ordinary Tuesday that happened inside these walls. And I thought, maybe she is right. Maybe I am old. Maybe I am clinging to something that does not make sense anymore. Maybe the right thing to do is let go and let my children take care of me the way I took care of them. I am ashamed to tell you how close I came to saying yes. Lisa called me the next day. She called me crying. She said, "Mom, do not sell the house. Do not give them power of attorney. Do not sign anything they put in front of you." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I heard Jessica talking at a family party last summer. She was drunk. She did not know I was in the bathroom. She was telling her sister that the house was going to be hers, that you were going to die soon and Derek was the only son, and the house should go to him anyway, that the money was already spent in her mind. She said the words out loud. Your mom is a goose laying golden eggs." Those were her words, a goose laying golden eggs. I stopped breathing. I literally stopped breathing. Lisa kept talking. She said, "I did not tell you because I did not want to hurt you, but now she is pushing you to sell and I cannot stay quiet anymore. Mom, please, do not let her take the house." I hung up the phone. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was the same face I had always had. Wrinkles around the eyes, gray hair I stopped dyeing after Mark died, the same small mole above my lip that my mother said made me look like Elizabeth Taylor. I looked normal. I looked like a grandmother. I did not look like a goose laying golden eggs, but I was. The confrontation did not happen the way you might think. There was no screaming match, no dramatic door slam, no moment where Jessica confessed everything while crying on her knees. Real life does not work that way. Real betrayal is quiet. It is incremental. It is the slow death of a lie that you have been telling yourself for years. I called Derek. I said, "I need to talk to you without Jessica." He said, "That is not possible right now." I said, "I am your mother." He said, "I know, Mom." I said, "Then come see me alone." He said, "I will try." He never came. I called again a week later. He said things were complicated. I said, "What things?" He said, "Jessica is under a lot of pressure." I said, "So am I." He said, "You do not understand." I said, "Then explain it to me." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Mom, we need to talk about the trust, Dad's trust." He said, "There are things you do not know, things Dad set up before he died, things that give me and Lisa certain rights to the property." I said, "What are you talking about?" Mark and I made a will together. We left everything to each other, then to the children equally, half to you, half to Lisa. He said, "It is not that simple. There were codicils, there were amendments. Dad was not well when he signed some of the documents." I felt the floor tilt. I said, "What documents?" He said, "I cannot talk about it without a lawyer." Then he hung up. I spent the next 3 days in a fog. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I sat in Mark's old recliner and stared at the wall. I tried to remember his last months. He was sick. He was tired. He was on so many medications that he sometimes forgot my name. He could not have signed legal documents. He could barely sign a birthday card for the grandchildren. I watched Lisa help him hold a pen. I watched his hand shake so badly that the letters were illegible. That was Mark at the end. A man who could not feed himself. A man who needed help walking to the bathroom. A man who cried because he could not remember the words for things. And now my son was telling me that man signed amendments to his trust. I got a lawyer. A woman named Carol who wore thick glasses and drove a Subaru with a faded coexist sticker on the bumper. She looked at the documents Derek sent over through his attorney. She read them twice. Then she took off her glasses and looked at me with an expression I cannot describe. It was not pity exactly. It was something worse. It was recognition. Like she had seen this before. Like she had sat across from 100 other old women who had been lied to by the people they loved.
She said these signatures are not valid. She said they are dated after your husband was declared mentally incompetent by his own doctor. She said someone added pages to the original trust without your knowledge, pages that transfer control of the house to a separate trust controlled by Derek and Jessica. She said if these documents hold up in court, you could lose everything. I asked how that was possible. She said someone had access to your husband's files. Someone had a notary who was willing to look the other way. Someone had time and patience and a plan. Someone. I knew who someone was, but I could not say her name out loud, because saying her name out loud would make it real. And if it was real, then the last 10 years of my life were a lie. The casseroles were a lie.
The tears at the funeral were a lie. The I love yous were a lie. The grandchildren were not a lie. The grandchildren were real, but they were also the bait. The beautiful, beautiful bait that Jessica used to catch me. The legal battle lasted 14 months. 14 months of depositions and motions and hearings and phone calls with Carol that always seemed to come at the worst times. I spent $17,000 on legal fees. $17,000 to keep a house that was already mine. The stress gave me shingles, then a small stroke that affected my left side for a few weeks. I could not drive, I could not cook, I could not fold my laundry. My friend Ruth drove me to my appointments. My neighbor Tony shoveled my walkway. Lisa came down on weekends and slept in her old room and held my hand when the panic attacks came. Derek did not come. Jessica did not come. The grandchildren did not come. 5 children who had spent every weekend in my house for 2 years disappeared like smoke. Chloe stopped calling me grandma. Emma stopped sending the drawings she used to mail me every month. Liam forgot my birthday. The twins probably did not even remember my name. That is what hurt the most. Not the money, not the house, not the legal betrayal. The silence. The absolute empty silence where their voices used to be. I cried in the grocery store once. I saw a little girl with pigtails who looked like Natalie. She was reaching for a box of cookies on a high shelf, and her grandmother lifted her up, and the little girl giggled and wrapped her arms around the grandmother's neck. I left my cart in the middle of the aisle. I walked to my car and sat in the parking lot and cried until my eyes were swollen. I cried for Chloe, who used to fall asleep on my chest. I cried for Noah, who called me Mimi because he could not say grandma. I cried for every weekend I spent cooking, cleaning, rocking, sinning, reading, wiping noses, changing diapers. I cried because I would do it all again. That is the sickness of being a mother. You would do it all again, even knowing how it ends. The court ruled in my favor. The forged documents were thrown out. The trust was restored to its original state. Derek and Jessica were ordered to pay my legal fees. They did not pay. They filed for bankruptcy instead. That was Jessica's final move. She burned everything down rather than let me win cleanly. She could not take my house, so she took my son. She turned him against me permanently. He stopped speaking to me after the ruling. He sent me one text message. It said, "I hope you are happy. You destroyed our family." I did not destroy our family. I just refused to be destroyed. But that does not make the silence any easier. It has been 3 years since the trial. 3 years of holidays alone. 3 years of a phone that does not ring. Lisa comes when she can, but she has her own family now, her own children. Her own life 2 hours away. I see her 4 or 5 times a year. I love those visits more than anything. But when she leaves, the house goes quiet again. The quiet is my constant companion now. It sleeps next to me. It eats with me. It follows me from room to room the way the children used to. I still live in the house. I still fold the towels. I still make coffee every morning and forget to turn off the coffee maker. I still look at the crack in the floor near the refrigerator. I still sleep in the bed where Mark died. I still have the bunk beds in the sewing room. I cannot bring myself to take them apart. They are white with stars on the curtains. They are the only proof that the children were ever here. Last week, I saw Derek at the grocery store. He was pushing a cart with Chloe in the seat. Chloe is 6 now. She has long braids and a missing front tooth. She looked at me with no recognition. Derek saw me. He stopped. We stood 10 feet apart in the frozen food aisle with the cold air blowing over us. I wanted to say something. I wanted to say I love you. I wanted to say I miss you. I wanted to say your father would be so ashamed of what you have become. But I did not say any of those things. I just looked at him,
He looked at me. Then he turned the cart around and walked the other way. Chloe waved at me over his shoulder. She waved because I was a stranger, and that is what children do. They wave at strangers. I waved back.
Then I stood in the frozen food aisle, holding a bag of peas, and I felt something break inside me. Not my heart, that broke years ago. Something deeper, something I do not have a name for. I drove home and sat in the driveway for a long time. The house looked the same as it always looked, white with blue shutters, the oak tree Mark planted, the cracked driveway he always said he would repave, the front door where he used to meet me with a kiss after work. I sat in the car until the sun went down, and the automatic lights turned on the porch. Then I went inside and made myself a pot of tea and watched television until I fell asleep on the couch. I do not know how to end this story. There is no satisfying conclusion, no moment of justice that makes everything okay. Jessica is gone from my life. Derek is gone. The grandchildren are gone. I am here in this house with my memories and my quiet, and my bunk beds covered in dust. I am 68 years old, and I have learned that love is not a contract. You can give everything, every dollar, every weekend, every ounce of your energy and hope and forgiveness. And the people you gave it to can still walk away without looking back. They can still take your son. Does anyone keep her warm? Does anyone sit with her when she is old and tired and her wings do not work anymore? No, they do not. They walk away. They push their carts in the opposite direction. They let their children wave at you like you are a stranger. I still fold the towels. I still make the coffee. I still turn off the lights in the sewing room every night, even though no one sleeps there anymore. I still say goodnight to Mark's photograph on the mantle. I still pretend that any of it meant something. Maybe it did. Maybe the meaning was never supposed to be for me. Maybe the meaning was for the weekends, for the macaroni and cheese, for the bedtime stories and the bubble baths, and the way Chloe used to wrap her whole body around my leg so I could not walk. Maybe that was the meaning, and maybe that is enough. But I do not believe that. Not tonight. Tonight I am just a woman in a quiet house with a quiet phone and a quiet heart. Tonight I am the goose, and the eggs are gone.